Now it's the turn of Kimberly, okay, director of B Green Living and B Corp initiatives. Okay, so our viewpoint will shed lights more on the challenges of being part of this community, but through the certification. Okay, thanks, Kim, to be here and for your time.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Kim Goddu-Alexander. I'm one of the directors of Bethesda Green. Bethesda Green is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Bethesda, Maryland. A little bit about me. I don't have a presentation today, so I thought I would just talk to everybody and feel free to ask questions as they come up. I was trained by B Lab in 2015 through their Measure What Matters program on how to administer the assessment for companies. And through Bethesda Green, we do a number of different, we have a number of different B Corp initiatives. So I am the partnerships chair for the B Local Mid-Atlantic group. And I'd like to give a shout out to all the B locals that are here today. And then also, yay, Nathan. And I also am one of the jurisdictional leads for our Best for DMV campaign. So we're working with several other organizations in the DC metro area to help businesses become more socially and environmentally responsible by using B Lab's tools, the SDG Action Manager, and also the B Impact Assessment. And then lastly, I do one-on-one coaching for businesses to help them get certified. So my experience comes from one-on-one coaching, and then also my my other training and my other work that I do through B Local and then through the Best for DMV campaign. So when Martina brought this subject to me, I had the help of my wonderful intern, Anna, who is on the call today. And I want to give a shout out to Anna for helping me prep for this. That there is not a lot of data. I reached out to B Lab on the challenges in the community and if they're tracking this sort of data. And we didn't get a whole lot of data from B Lab, so that's something that they're going to continue working on in the future. But there has been a little bit written about this, about challenges of staying in the community and maintaining B Corp certification. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience and then a little bit about the experience that I did a little bit of research on. So for folks who don't know, Chris Marcus, he is an academic. He's currently at the University of Cambridge. He wrote a book called Better Business. And if folks want to put that link into the chat so folks can check it out, that would be great. It's a fantastic book. And he wrote a little bit about the challenges of some of the larger B Corps and why those companies chose not to recertify. And then I can talk a little bit about the companies that I work with that are small to medium-sized companies and why they've had challenges in the past, or why they're having challenges either staying in the community or maintaining their certification. And then also I have a few pointers on how either be academic folks or students can stay involved in the movement. So first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience with small to medium-sized organizations. So one of the biggest challenges that I've heard from companies is that they sometimes, especially small companies, there's a staff turnover. So they lack a point person to maintain certification, either when they're in the process of getting certified or maybe recertifying in the future. So that was one thing that the companies that I work with and the companies that I consult with, we always try to see if we can pinpoint somebody who's going to be at the organization for a long time, in addition to working with the founders of the companies to maintain their certification over time so that they're able to set goals for themselves in the B Corp in the assessment, in the B Impact Assessment, and then so they're able to maintain their certification over time. The other thing that I heard from some of the companies that I work with is sometimes there's a lack of support from other B Corps in the area. There's a number of areas in the United States and around the world that have no B locals, and I want to encourage those places to encourage more B Corp certified businesses in the area by creating a B local or reaching out to B Lab or other B locals in the area to see if they could get support. Another thing that I heard from some of the companies that I work with is a lack of understanding about the B Corp certification from investors or buyers of companies. There's been a few companies that I've seen over time that were sold where they did not actually renew their certification just because the investors or the buyers of the company did not really understand certification. And this is actually applicable to a lot of the larger companies that were sold that were not able to maintain their certification over time. Was the buyers of the companies unfortunately didn't really have an understanding or weren't necessarily on board with the certification at the time. So Last thing that I heard from some of the companies that I work with is that there's long wait times to get certified. I know B Lab is working very hard on this to try to reduce the certification times for different companies, and they've created a few different models for putting folks to the pipeline on getting certified. But in some folks, it's 12 months to actually get certified. So long wait times, and especially if there's staff turnover during that wait time, can be a little bit difficult for maintaining certification. So a couple of the other things that I heard about was changing legal structures and becoming a benefit corporation. So this is something that especially some of the larger companies that I mentioned. So Etsy is one of them. The Honest Company, Warby Parker. They've all noted that changing their legal structure and becoming a benefit corporation. So the United States, I can talk about the United States specifically. So for some of the companies that I work with, the small to medium-sized companies have an easier time becoming a benefit corporation because there's not as many hoops to jump through in changing your legal structure with the state that you're incorporated in the United States. So that was one of the things that we heard that was difficult, that there was difficulty for companies in getting certified. And then other companies, and this is one thing that Chris Marcus noted in his book, was that there might be a way, hopefully, that we could widen the funnel in the future, and those are his words, to share the tools that promote impact management broadly, while companies wait to get certified, or try to bring more companies on board. So those are a couple of the challenges that I've heard. I can talk a little bit about, I have some points about Etsy and about Warby Parker, and about the Honest Company, and how they were struggling to maintain their certification. But just to how folks can stay engaged in the community. So specifically for students, I always encourage students to work for a B Corp company if they can. There's the B Work directory, which lists different opportunities that are available in local B Corps, local B Corp certified companies in and around. I think it's around the world, but definitely in the United States. Interning for Best for campaign, if there's one happening in your area. I know there's several happening in the United States and several around the world. I would always encourage younger folks to do that. Participating on a student consulting team. So in my role as the university partnership, the partnerships chair for B Local Mid-Atlantic, I am not an academic myself, but I maintain all of our university partnerships for B Local. So I work with Georgetown University, I work with University of Maryland, I work with Washington College, I work with schools that are large and small in the DMV area. We host events for students. We try to get faculty involved, for faculty that are studying different aspects of B Corp certification. So we always encourage, if there's student teams available or consulting opportunities available, that students would definitely try to hop on those and work with a local B Corp company. The panel after me is definitely going to hopefully talk a little bit more about that. So I'll leave that to them to highlight that a little bit more. And then I would encourage folks to reach out to B Lab and all the B locals in their area to see if there's opportunities to volunteer or intern. And then for faculty, this is something that I wanted to put out because it's not something that we've done before at B Local Mid-Atlantic, but it's something we're interested in doing. Is we'd love to help with research on projects or research on the B Corp certified companies in our area. So we'd love to hear from faculty if they'd like to work with us at B Local Mid-Atlantic and research projects. We'd love to support those different efforts. So Martina, I'm happy to continue talking about the different companies, but I'm also happy to stop and take questions because I know that was a lot of information very quickly. Up to you. You're on mute, sorry.
We have a question from the floor, curiosity about the certification process and experience from Kim.
Is Warby Parker not a B Corp anymore?
So what I have is that they're letting their certification lapse because they chose not to incorporate as a benefit corporation. And the notes that I have from Chris Marcus said that the investors were on board to become a benefit corporation, but the process to change legal structure was too challenging given the size and stage of the company. Those are the notes that I have from about Warby Parker. I don't have a direct quote from them, Nathan, but I'm happy to get one for you. Yeah. I also found it was interesting. The Honest Company, their biggest challenge was also changing their legal structure to a benefit corporation. They were certified from 2012 to 2017. And their quote about why they gave up their B Corp status was they were unable to make the legal transition to a public benefit corporation because it would raise the number of legal and compliance issues for the company that could lead to risk and uncertainty. So that was a direct quote from the Honest Company, which was pretty interesting. And then in Etsy's case, it was the CEO who was replaced, and also 15% of the executive staff was let go after they were sold, which is why they let their certification lapse. So Chris Marcus goes into more detail into his book, in his book Better Business. If folks are interested, I would encourage you to pick up that book today to learn more about those specific examples. And those companies do have a little bit of information on their websites about why they may or may not have given up their B Corp status, but we found most of the information about why companies did not necessarily stay certified through the research that had been done by other folks. Just to point out, we also, as I mentioned, we reached out to B Lab about this specific topic, and it's something that they said that they were going to look more into because it's not something that is currently on their radar. They're more focused on trying to get as many folks through the pipeline as they can because of their long wait times. So it's something that we'll hopefully see a lot more information about in the future. All right, yes, Laureate Education, just so folks know, Laureate Education, B Local Mid-Atlantic has worked with Laureate Education in the past, and Laureate Education is was based in Baltimore, Maryland. They have since, they're in the process of dissolving their organization. They are basically, they sold off all their assets, and they became Walden University. So there is a Walden University in the state of Maryland, and B Local Mid-Atlantic is currently working with Walden University as Laureate Education has phased out its operations. So yeah, Laureate Education is another great example of a company that has either dissolved or given up its certification. Yeah. Any other questions?
A quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question to conclude.
Yeah.
Given that buyers and investors are key stakeholders in a community, and particularly in a community of in an economy, what do you think on your what is your take? What do you think? Why there is this lack of understanding from buyers and investors for the importance of the?
Yeah, I mean, this is an uphill battle with a lot of buyers and investors, is sort of the lack of education. And this model, especially the benefit corporation model, is still new. And a lot of investors don't understand it, and they don't understand that you would want to put your environmental and social performance on the same platform as your profits and your revenues. So that's unfortunately still the case with a lot of companies. There's been a lot of movement, as we've seen, especially with larger companies. There's been a lot of big name companies that have still been able to maintain their certification over time and maintain their values over time. Patagonia comes to mind, Ben & Jerry's comes to mind, but Unilever is an interesting case if folks want to get more into Unilever and their purchasing of B Corp certified companies. But mostly it's a lack of education, lack of understanding. There have been several investors and several other types of ventures out there that have tried to include more impact investing, to include more environmental and social impacts, but unfortunately it's still a lack of education. So there's a long way to go there.
Maybe it's the case that social network externalities of a bigger community will have an impact on this lack of understanding. So everything starts from building the community from scratch. Okay.
I think I ended on time, Martina, so you're all set.
You are great. So we'll have a Q&A, the final session for a final discussion. But